Good morning. Call meeting to order. Summer, please, roll call.
Marla Kata,
Here?
Scott Garnan,
Here.
Deb Hankins, I do not see her yet, Russell Wilson,
Here.
Thomas Ryan.
Here.
Okay, you have a quorum.
All right. Since we got roll call done, item 2, minutes. Consider approval of minutes of Environmental Enforcement Board special meeting of June 22nd, 2026, and reconvened meeting of June 23 and 24, 2026.
29.
Motion to approve.
29.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, second.
Oh,
Any?
Who motioned?
A motion to
Oh,
approve.
thank you.
Any discussions? Okay. I got a question
Mhm.
on, I think if you go to 29, minutes of 29, can you open, please?
The minutes from the 29th.
29. It might be a typo, I just wanted to clarify it.
What page?
The end, number 12, it says consider motion to enter recess until June 23, 2026. Is that a typo?
No, because that was from the original agenda, so we were through the special meeting and the 2 reconvene meetings, we were following along the original agenda. So that was an item from, as it was stated in the original agenda, so
Okay.
I don't know, Mandy, do you think there's a different way that should have been?
I think it's appropriate. We went past the original 2 days that we had originally scheduled it, which is why we had the reconvene meeting on the 29th. And the number 12 is just adjourning the end of the meeting instead of reconvening into another day.
Okay. All right. It's all good. Okay. Cast your ballot. Yeah, passes 4-0. Item 3, executive session. Consider convening into executive session upon recommendation of the board's attorney pursuant to 25 Oklahoma Statute 307B4 and City of Enid Code 8-3H-1C to conduct confidential communication between the board and its attorney concerning a pending action where the board, with the advice of its attorney, determines that disclosure would seriously impair its ability to process the proceedings in the public interest, specifically for the purpose of receiving legal advice and deliberating at the conclusion of the trial de novo hearing held in appeal of notice of violation order number NOV 001 and related administrative order issued to Mid-Continent Packaging, Inc. and reconvened into special session to announce its decision in the form of written findings. Do I have a motion?
I will make a motion to go into executive session. Second.
All right, cast your ballot. Passes 5-0.
We're going to be downstairs in the lower level conference room for executive session today, guys.
Do I have a motion to reconvene into the regular session?
I'll motion to reconvene.
I'll second it.
All right, cast your ballot. All right, so do we need to continue?
We need a motion to continue.
Motion to continue.
It will need to have date, time, place.
Okay.
So I will motion to reconvene tomorrow, August 10th at 10.
11th.
August 11th, I apologize. Tomorrow, August 11th at 10 a.m. here in the council chambers.
Yep, okay.
I'll second.
All right, cast your ballot. Have any discussion? All right. All right, passes 5-0. So we'll reconvene in tomorrow at 10 o'clock.
Yes.
10 o'clock.
All right. Item 5, public comments.
Public comments is held till the end of the,
Oh, okay.
we haven't
Finished
finished
the executive session.
executive session. We'll pick up public comment tomorrow after we've finished the
Finish it.
executive session.
Perfect. Okay. Then it's an adjourn, I guess.
Yep.
All right, motion. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Are we adjourning?
We're continuing.
We're
A motion to
continuing, so
we've already
we're
had our
closed.
motion to continue the meeting. We're good to go.
Yeah.
All right, cool.
Yep.
Quit dragging it out.
All right. Do I have a motion to reconvene?
We'll make a motion to reconvene.
All right.
I'll second.
Cast your ballot. All right. It passes 4-0.
Do we need roll call? Okay, just making sure.
No,
We are still.
we don't. You're just gonna, no, she's just gonna note that Tom
Tom's
is
on,
not
okay.
at the reconvene meeting.
Okay. All right. Do I have a motion to reconvene into?
I will make a motion to reconvene into executive session.
I second it.
All right. Cast your ballot. Passes 4-0. So. Do I have a motion to reconvene?
Make a motion to reconvene.
I second it.
Cast your ballot. Oh, sorry. Cast your ballot. Passes 4-0. All right.
He's gonna read the order, and then we'll look for a motion on the order.
Okay. Whenever we get the final order.
He gave you control.
Yep, now he needs to open the document.
Did- everybody- Can you get the order pulled up?
All right. Okay. Findings of fact, conclusions of law and order of the City of Enid Environmental Enforcement Board. The above slated matter came on the hearing before the City of Enid Environment Board, herein after called Board, for Mid-Continent Packing, herein after called Mid-Continent, appeal of the City of Enid's, herein after City of City. Notice of violation NOV 001 issued July 22nd, 2025. Its administrative order issued November 21, 2025, and its amendment administrative order issued March 16, 2026. Pursuant to City of Enid Code of Ordinances 8-3H-1C, this appeal to board was conducted as a trial de novo. Pursuant to Enid Code of Ordinance 8-3H-1, the board consists of the city's code official, the city's director of engineering services, 2 representatives from among holding permits from the city as significant industrial users, SIU, and a resident member, resident member. The board is chaired by Director of Engineering Murali Katta. The city code official is Scott Garnett. The two SIU representatives are Debbie Hankins, Corporate Environmental Health and Safety Manager at Parish Enterprises, and Russell Wilson, Director of Facility Services at Integras Health. The city resident member, Thomas Ray. The board is subjected to Oklahoma Open Meetings Act. The board convened for a 3-day evidentiary hearing on June 22nd, 2026, June 23rd, 2026, and June 29, 2026. A public meeting notice was posted for June 22nd and June 23rd meetings. A separate public meeting notice was posted for the continuation of the hearing on June 29th, 2026. A quorum of board was presented throughout all the portions of the hearing. The city appeared by and through its counsel of record, Kaylee Maddie Davis and Tom Ferguson. The respondent, the Mid-Continent, appeared by and through its counsel of record, Mark Walker and Hank Heron. Prior to the evidentiary hearing, the board considered Mid-Continent's motion to continue, the city's response, the Mid-Continent's reply. The motion to continue was denied and the matter proceeded to hearing. Pursuant to Enid's Code of Ordinance 8-3H-1C provides that written findings will be made at the conclusion of each hearing and deliberations will occur in executive session. Thereafter, the board convened in a properly noticed meeting on August 10, 2026 and deliberated in executive session. The August 10, 2026 meeting of board was continued to August 11, 2026 to allow for additional deliberation in executive session. During its executive session at the August 10 and August 11 meeting, the board examined and pleading and considered all the evidence and arguments presented by counsel during the evidentiary hearing. Upon leaving executive session, the board convened the open public meeting and cast votes regarding the adoption of findings of the fact, conclusion of law, and final order as a reflection herein. Findings of fact: the city owns and operates a public-owned treatment works, POTW, also referred to as the Water Reclamation Facility, WRF, which treats wastewater from residents, business, and industries before discharging treated effluent to Skeleton Creek. Wastewater entering to POTW contains contaminants that must be removed through discharge, including ammonia, phosphorus, suspended solids, organic material, and other pollutants. Influence samples are evidence of what entered into the plant. Influent water is what the biomass would be exposed to, subject to flow rate, basin volume, and hydraulic retention time. The Enid Water Reclamation Facility, WRF, includes both physical treatment process and biological treatment process. The biological treatment process relies on biomass that includes bacteria and high life forms, but bacteria are primarily responsible for facilitating the treatment process to remove pollutants from wastewater before discharge. The Enid WRF can be described as activated sludge treatment system because it uses active biomass and living organisms to treat wastewater. The primary treatment includes physical process such as screening, grit removal, and gravity settling, while secondary treatment includes biological treatment process. The activated sludge treatment relies on biological conversion of soluble organic material into biomass by microbial population, and that nitrification requires functioning ammonia oxidizing and nitrite oxidizing bacteria under aerobic conditions. Nitrification is a biologically facilitated process in which ammonia is converted into nitrate and then nitrate. Ammonia oxidizing bacteria convert ammonia into nitrate, and nitrite oxidizing bacteria convert into nitrate. Nitrifying bacteria are sensitive organisms and grow more slowly than heterotrophic bacteria. They are more sensitive than many other microorganisms present within the activated sludge process. Once damaged or inhibited, they require significant time and effort to restore. Inhibition reduces treatment rate, while toxicity more directly relates to no treatment. Loss of inhibition of nitrifying bacteria results in increased effluent ammonia. Ammonia is present in Enid's WRF influent and is a necessary nutrient for biological growth. Ammonia can be a pollutant of concern if discharged into the receiving stream. Ammonia discharged to a receiving stream can contribute to a algae blooms, oxidation, oxygen depletion, and fish kills in that ammonia itself can be toxic to fish and other aquatic species. Organic material removal is important because oxygen demanding substance discharged to a receiving stream can deplete dissolved oxygen and cause fish kill. Phosphorus removal at the Enid water reclamation facility also depends on biological activity, including phosphate accumulating organisms. Disruption to the activated sludge process may adversely affect phosphorus removal, floc formation, solid settling, sludge quality, and overall effectiveness of the treatment process. Quaternary ammonium compounds, herein called QAC, are used as disinfectant surfactants in industrial cleaning products. QAC compounds disrupt bacterial cell membrane, which is the disinfecting mechanism. QACs have similar impacts on treatment plants, including inhibition and toxicity to biomass. QACs inhibit nitrification and can be toxic to activated sludge. QACs can be inhibitory to toxic to aquatic life. Inhibitory are toxic to aquatic life. Dr. Stover, here in after call, Stover and Dr. Ed, here in our call after Ed, agreed that QACs may be capable of interfering with the biological treatment process at a wastewater treatment plant under appropriate conditions. Both experts also agreed that QACs may inhibit or adversely affect the microorganisms responsible for biological wastewater treatment plant. Stover identified published literature reporting inhibition of nitrification at concentrations ranging from approximately 0.1 to 1 milligrams per liter to 3 to 5 milligrams per liter, and that no one has determined any set number. Mid-Continent's Exhibit 47 states that QACs kill bacteria by disrupting cell membrane. Recognizing operator concern over wastewater treatment plant upsets and shows toxicity depends on MLSS, sludge health, and operating conditions. It also inhibition at concentration well above 50 grams per liter when mixed liquor serpented solids. MLSS is lower, around 10 to 20 parts per million of nitrification. The studies relied upon by Eddy did not involve Enid's activated sludge nitrification process, but instead address different biological process, including denitrification, anaerobic treatment system, and other wastewater environments. The city is regulated by ODEQ and Oklahoma Department of Environmental Quality, which in turn operates the operates with delegated authority to regulate under the Federal Clean Water Act of 1972 to implement the National Pollution Discharge Elimination System called NPDES. The NPDES permit program addresses water pollution by regulating point sources that discharge pollutants to waters of United States. It was created in 1972 by Clean Water Act. Under the NPDES permit program states, governments are authorized by the United States Environmental Protection Agency, EPA, to perform many permitting, administrative, and enforcement aspects of the program. OPDES permit number OK0021628 authorizes the city to discharge treated wastewater to Skeleton Creek, subject to specific numerical effluent limitations and monitoring requirements, including ammonia limits of 4.0 milligrams per liter, monthly average, and 6.0 milligrams per liter, weekly average, and requirements that the permittee complies with all permit conditions, conduct routine sampling, and submit electronic discharge monitoring reports. The city's permit further prohibits the discharge of pollutants in a manner that interfere with the treatment process or causes deleterious effects to receiving waters, thereby defining the regulatory standards against which the document effluent concentration and discharge continues to violation. The city's OPDES permit governs operate of WRF and authorizes discharge into Skeleton Creek and imposes mandatory discharge and monitoring obligations on the city. Failure to comply with the OPDES permit many results in ODEQ investigation, notices of violation, imposition of corrective requirements, additional monitoring, and penalties. I forgot to start reading numbers. That's okay. Number 31. As the holder of the OPDES permit, the city is legally responsible for the quality of treated effluent discharged from the water reclamation facility, regardless of whether pollutants cause or contributing to a permit violation originate from residential, commercial, or industrial users of the collection system. Number 32. The city is responsible for compliance with its OPDES permit and is required to operate and maintain as industrial pretreatment program designed to prevent pollutants discharged by industrial users from interfering with treatment operations, passing through POTW untreated, damaging treatment process or equipments, creating hazardous or causing violations of the city's OPDES permit. Number 33. Pursuant to Enid's Code of Ordinance 8-3A-2, SIUs may include an industrial user discharging more than 25,000 gallons per day, a categorical industrial user, or a user with the capability of discharging toxic pollutants. Number 34. The city regulates SIUs through industrial wastewater permits, the sewer use ordinance, inspections, monitoring, sampling, reporting requirements, and other pretreatment measures intended to protect the POTW. Number 35. SIUs are required to comply with their industrial user discharge permits. Notify the city of material operation changes affecting the wastewater discharge. Report slug or other significant discharge events. Comply with applicable pretreatment requirements and cooperate with the city's pretreatment program. Number 36. Mid-Continent is a SIU of the city sewer system who operated under a city-issued industrial wastewater permit during the relevant time period. Number 37. Mid-Continent's business involves mixing and packing chemicals, packaging, chemicals, cleaning products, including sanitizers, soaps, toilet products, and other cleaning or surface active products that include quacks and other toxic compounds. Number 38, mid-continent's permit during the relevant time period was in effect from June 3, 2020 through June 2, 2025. Mid-continent permit requires samples to be taken. A proper sampling point requires a location that is safe, accessible, representative of the user's discharge, and isolated from mixing with other users' effluent. Number 41. The city expressed concerns about mid-continent sampling point and methods. The sampling point was a floor drain located inside the facility. The sampling point method involves vacuuming the floor drain. The location and method did not provide a good representative sample of mid-continent's discharge. Number 42. City of Enid environmental specialist Stephanie Sivanders, hereinafter Sivanders, issued a directive requiring mid-continent to identify and implement a safer and more representative sampling location. Number 43. Sivanders, the city, mid-continent, and Envirotech Engineering and Consulting, hereinafter Envirotech, work together to evaluate discharge pathways and identify a suitable sampling location. Number 44. Documented dye testing established that wastewater discharge from mid-continent's internal floor drains is hydraulically connected to the city's sanitary sewer system and specifically travels from the facility through lateral lines to manhole MH1P020, where dye introduced into production area floor drain was directly observed at the manhole, thereby establishing the existence of a continuous and traceable discharge pathway from the facility. Number 45. MH1P020 is located on the east side of 54th Street, receives the combined industrial and domestic wastewater discharge from mid-continent before the wastewater commingles with other source in the border collection system. Number 46. MH1P020 was established as mid-continent's new sampling location by agreement of all parties. Number 47. Mid-continent's permit authorized it to discharge industrial wastewater in accordance with the stated terms and conditions which provided a part. C. The permittee shall not discharge wastewater containing any of the following substance from discharge point. Part 1C2. Any liquid solids or gases which by reason of their nature or quantity or may be sufficient either alone or by interaction with other substances to be injurious to any other way of the POTW or to the operations of the POTW. Part 1C5. Part 1C5. Any wastewater containing toxic pollutants in sufficient quantity, either singly or by interaction with other pollutants, to injure or interfere with any wastewater treatment process, continue a hazard to human or animals, create a toxic effect in the receiving wastewater of the POTW, or to exceed the limitations set forth in a categorical pretreatment standards. A toxic pollutant shall include but not be limited to any pollutant identified pursuant to Section 307, capital A, small a, of the Federal Water Pollution Control Act, Clean Water Act. Part 1, C8. Any substance which will cause the POTW to violate its NPDES permit and our state disposal system permit are the receiving water quality standards. Part 1, C11. Any pollutants, including oxygen-demanding pollutants, BOD5, etc., released at a flow rate and our pollutant concentration which a user knows or has reason to know will cause interference to the City of Enid wastewater treatment facility. In no case shall a slug load have a flow rate or contain concentration of qualities of pollutants that exceed for any time period longer than 15 minutes, more than 5 minutes, the average 24-hour concentration quantities are flow during normal operation. Part 1, C13. Any wastewater which causes a hazard to human life or creates a public nuisance. Number 48. Mid-Continent's permit prohibits the discharge of substances that could interference, pass through, hazardous condition, or exceeded applicable standards. The permit further requires monthly monitoring and reporting of pollutant concentration from a designated discharge point, mandates the use of approved sampling and analytical methods, and obligates the permit to report violations, accidental discharges, and changes in operation. Number 49. Mid-Continent's permit did not contain a numeric quack effluent limitation. However, it did not contain prohibitions against discharging substances that may injure the POTW, toxic pollutants that may interfere with the treatment or create toxic effects in receiving waters, substances causing the POTW to violate its permit, pollutants that interfere with the treatment facility, and wastewater that creates a hazard or public nuisance. Number 50. Any non-compliance with any city-issued permit conditions consists a violation of the City of Enid Sewer Use Ordinance 51. On or around May 19th, 20th, 2025, Stover reported that operations at the Enid's water reclamation facility began experiencing abnormal plant condition, including elevated effluent ammonia, foaming, and a sanitation, cleaning, or chemical type of odor. The data indicated an initial inhibition of followed by a failure of nitrification. Number 52. On or around May 19th, 2025, Savanters learned of the plant upset while conducting routine sampling across the sewer system for semi-annual regulatory process. Number 53. Cervantes sampling locations included Mid-Continent's designated sampling location MH1P020. Number 54. Cervantes smelled a strong, cleaner-like odor and observed a thick layer of foam at MH1P020 when the manhole cover was removed. Number 55. The conditions at MH1P020 were abnormal compared to typical manhole observations. Number 56. Cervantes observed similar conditions at 54th Street Lift Station, which is where Mid-Continent effluent flows to. Number 57. Cervantes did not observe similar conditions throughout the remainder of the collection system. Specifically, Cervantes observed and compared multiple manholes across the system and testified that abnormal foam and odor were not uniformly present throughout the system. Number 58. Influent sampling collected at the water reclamation facility during and immediately following the May 2025 upset identified multiple quacks, including numerous benzalconium compounds, didectyl dimethyl ammonium compounds, dioctyl dimethyl ammonium compounds, and other cationic surfactants. It did not report any detectable octyl dimethyl ammonium chloride. Number 59. On May 2025, Cervantes collected a grab sample on Mid-Continent's representative sampling point. The sample identified numerous quack species at exceptionally high concentrations, including multiple benzalochromium compound, dideclo-dimethyl ammonium, DDAC, dioctyl dimethyl ammonium, and octyl dideclo dimethyl ammonium chloride, and related quaternary ammonium compounds. Number 60. Several of these compounds were represented at concentrations thousands, or for certain compounds hundreds of thousands times higher, greater than the laboratory reporting limits. Octyl dimethyl ammonium chloride alone was reported at approximately 146,318 milligrams per liter, while dideclo-dimethyl ammonium was reported at approximately 1,810 milligrams per liter, demonstrating an extremely concentrated quack waste stream rather than trace environmental contaminations. At the influent sampling confirmed that quack containing wastewater had reached the city's biological treatment process during the period of the upset. Number 62. Ed testified that a substantial portion of the quack concentrations identified in the May 20 Mid-Continent's grab sample consisted of octyl dimethyl ammonium chloride, which was not detected in the effluency May 20th influent composite sample. Number 63. The plant influent samples analyzed by effluency were composite samples representing wastewater entering the water reclamation facility over time after transport through the city's collection system, whereas the May 20 samples were sample collected from the Mid-Continent representative sampling location was a grab sample reflecting the wastewater present at a single point in time before commingling with other wastewater. Number 64. Although the May 20 Mid-Continent grab sample and May 20 influent composite sample from effluency have different relative concentration of individual quack species, they do not demonstrate different sources. Rather, those differences are consistent with the dilution, mixing, differing sampling methodologies, travel time throughout the collection system, absorption of cationic surfactants to solids and biomass, degradation, and changes in relative concentrations among compounds. Number 65. Stover agreed that grab samples and composite sample results should not be compared in an apple-to-apple fashion without caution. He defined a grab sample as a sample dipped from a basin, stream, or manhole that represents what is passing through at the moment of the collection. Dr. Stover defined a composite sample as individual sample collected over time and compiled to represent what occurred over 24 hours. Number 66. Stover's calculations demonstrated that WRF received approximately 700 pounds of quacks on May 20, approximately 300 pounds on May 21st, and approximately 700 pounds on May 22nd. These calculations reflected the total quantity of quark concentration of the quacks entering the POTW during those periods, and not merely their concentrations in individual sample. Number 67. Quacks loading of the magnitude could not be reasonable be attributed to ordinary residential, commercial, or incidental consumer use within the collection system. The quantities of quacks entering the WRF during the upset were consistent with discharge from a significant industrial source handling quack containing products. Number 68. Quack compounds are capable of causing the observed treatment upset and are consistent with the observed form, chemical odor, and biological impacts at the plant. Number 69. On or around May 21, 2025, a fish kill was reported. As a result of the reported fish kill, ODEQ and the city conducted an investigation. The fish kill was concurrent with the POTW upset. The investigation concluded that the fish kill was associated with the discharge of high ammonia levels from POTW to Skeleton Creek. As a result of the investigation, ODEQ issued a notice of violation to the city after the event. Number 71. The notice of violation stated that the city's wastewater treatment facility discharged partially treated wastewater into the Skeleton Creek in violation of its OPDES permit, resulting in a fish kill and widespread environmental impacts, and further established that the treatment plant upset was associated with the introduction of ammonia, surfactants, and disinfectant type chemical that rendered biological treatment process inactive. With the documented effluent parameters exceedance, including elevated ammonia, CBOD, and total suspended solids, thereby providing independent regulatory evidence that pollutant discharge into the treatment system caused exceedance of permit limits and environmental harm consistent with interference attributable to upstream industrial contributions. Number 72. Oklahoma Department of Wildlife Conservation issued a fine or penalty related to the fish kill upset of the May 2025 event. Number 73. The record supports that the fish kill occurred in a temporal proximity to the wastewater treatment water reclamation facility, biological upset, and elevated effluent ammonia. Number 74. Following the May 19, 2025 upset and the notification of a fish kill, Cervantes and the city investigated significant industrial users with known discharge who operated under the city-issued industrial wastewater permit during the relevant time period. Number 75. Cervantes' investigation included sampling at multiple locations, field observations to determine presence of any foam and strong chemical odors at manhole 1P020 and other manhole locations. Samples collected were analyzed by the city's in-house lab. 76. Cervantes conducted a subsequent sampling events at manhole 1P020 and the 54th Street lift station. The samples continued to include elevated quack concentrations. Number 77. After the May 19, 2025 event at the Enid's WRF, Cervantes contacted Mid-Continent's operations manager Peter Harrison, hereinafter Harrison, to let him know the POTW was experiencing an upset. Mid-Continent responded to Cervantes on at least 2 occasions to inform her additional cleaning took place on the 19th in preparation of an audit. Number 78. On May 23rd, 2025, Cervantes notified Mid-Continent that the POTW had experienced a biological upset beginning on May 19, 2025, identified Mid-Continent as a potential contributor based on its location and discharge characteristics. Number 79. The city's investigation focused on Mid-Continent after sampling results and field observations indicated abnormal foam odor and quack-related compounds associated with Mid-Continent discharge. Number 80. As part of her investigation, Cervantes required Mid-Continent to provide a written response detailing all cleaning chemicals used, associated safety data sheets, hereinafter SDS, and disposal practices, specifically including whether wash water or cleaning solutions were discharged into the floor drain connected to the sanitary sewer. Number 81. Mid-Continent produced 1,200 SDS containing 9,000 pages of data. Number 82. The SDS shows that chemicals used by Mid-Continent are toxic pollutants, should not be disposed of in public sewers, and are specifically inhibitory to aquatic life. Number 83. In July, Mid-Continent advised that beginning May 2022-2025, it voluntarily began containerizing cleaning wastewater generated around the quacks production area for off-site disposal. Prior to this date, all quack containing wastewater was discharged into the sanitary sewer. Number 84. At the time of May 2025 event, Enid WRF flow rate was approximately 7 million gallons per day, with the May 19 to 20 flow rate described as approximately 7.3 million gallons per day. Number 85. Operational monitoring data for the Enid WRF for May 10, 2025 to June 9, 2025 showed a marked increase in effluent ammonia concentrations beginning approximately May 20, 2025, with values rising from near zero to levels exceeding 30 to 50 milligrams per liter, and concurrent increases in effluent suspended solids and total phosphorus, providing a contemporaneous sampling data demonstrating a significant deterioration in the treatment performance and elevated pollutant concentrations in discharged effluent during the upset period. There is a gap of missing data during the days when the ODEQ directed that the POTW be shut down because of the upset. Number 86. Before May 19, effluent ammonia values at the WRF were at or near non-detect levels of approximately 0.124 milligrams per liter, which represented complete nitrification. Number 87. The ammonia patterns reflected SERV inhibition followed by complete failure of nitrification. The observed ammonia increase was consistent with loss of nitrification and would not be expected if nitrification were functioning properly. Number 88. The operational monitoring data led Stover to conclude that the plant began receiving some form of toxicant on May 19, 2025. Number 89. Stover was asked about the effect various other substances could have on the WRF. He testified that the arsenic alone would not foam or smell like a cleaner, and cyanide would not smell like a cleaner. Stover pointed would not have been reasonable to test everywhere else in the cities for arsenic and heavy metal arsenic, heavy metals, and cyanide in response to the observed foaming and mid-continent's manhole evidence. Number 90. The loss of nitrifying bacteria requires the city and its contract operator to actively restore the biological treatment process before the WRF could return to normal operations. Because nitrifying bacteria are slow-growing organisms, recovery requires substantial time, monitoring, and operational adjustments, including investigations of the upset, sampling laboratory review, biomass monitoring, and process control changes. Number 91. As part of the emergency response, City and the Stover Group implemented the extraordinary operation measures to restore the biological treatment process and reduce the effects of quacks on the WRF. Those measures included purchasing and applying NutraQuat, a product intended to mitigate or neutralize the effects of quacks within the treatment process, in an effort to preserve or restore biological activity. The Stover Group also ordered specialized nitrifying bacteria and reseeded the WRF in an effort to restore the biological treatment process. A special pump was required for these efforts. Number 92. Considering the pre-event complete nitrification, the abrupt post-May 19th ammonia spike, observed foam and cleaner type odor, quack detections associated with the mid-continent confirms loss of nitrifiers, and Stover's testimony regarding quack's toxicity and inhibition, the record supports the findings that an inhibitory or toxic industrial discharge caused the May 2025 nitrification failure. Number 93. Considering the source isolated sampling locations, dye test confirmation of mid-continent discharge pathway, field observations at the mid-continent manhole, quack detections, and the city investigation, the record supports the finding that mid-continent discharge was the source or a contributing source of the toxic or inhibitory discharge that caused the WRF upset. Number 94. On July 22nd, 2025, following the city's investigation of the May 19th through 2025 Enid WRF plant upset and the fish kill, the city issued a mid-continent notice of violation NOV 001 alleging that mid-continent violated permit number 021 by discharging a violation of the permit, including causing an upset of the city's wastewater treatment plant in May 2025. Number 95. The NOV was based on sampling detecting elevated concentrations of quaternary ammonium compounds in the facility's discharge, which were determined to have caused a significant wastewater treatment plant upset on May 19, 2025. The identified violations including discharge of toxic pollutants in quantities sufficient to interfere with POTW operations, failure to prevent pass-through or interference, the lack of adequate pretreatment and chemical management control. It specifically documents that the facility failed to provide a written summary of discharge practices, failed to confirm or evaluate pretreatment effectiveness, and failed to identify all chemical products and processes contributing to the discharge, thereby evidencing both the existence of a discharge containing regulatory pollutants and non-compliance with reporting and operational requirements. Number 96. On November 21, 2025, the city issued an administrative order to Mid-Continent for notice of violation NOV 001. Number 97. The administrative order to Mid-Continent requires a corrective action, additional pretreatment or controls, monitoring and sampling, planning and reporting, and cost recovery. Mr. Gilbert, hereinafter Gilbert, testified that the administrative order was intended to identify responsibility, protect the facility, and prevent reoccurrence, not to punish Mid-Continent. Number 98. On March 16, 2026, the city issued an amended administrative order to Mid-Continent for notice of violation NOV 001. Number 99. Gilbert testified that Mid-Continent did not accept responsibility for causing the upset, did not acknowledge that its discharge contributed to the loss of nitrification, and maintained that it was not responsible. The city incurred the cost of responding to the event and paid penalties or fines associated with the regulatory responses, including ODEQ and wildlife-related consequences. Number 100. The cost recovery summary, which itemized expenses incurred as a result of the wastewater incident, includes 1. Regulatory enforcement costs, including the administrative fee assessed by DEQ. Number 2. Natural resource damages, including the fisheries damage claim associated with the downstream fish kill. Number 4. Extensive laboratory testing costs, including repeated analytical testing performed by specialty laboratories SPL over many months following the upset. Number 4. Whole effluent toxicity wet testing performed because of the first wet test failed due to 2025 upset. Number 5. Pump equipment required for the effort to restore the biological treatment process and reduce the effects of quacks on the WRF. Number 6. NutraQuat purchased and applied as part of the city's effort to mitigate or neutralize quacks impacts within the treatment process. Number 7. Biological reseeding material, including specialized nitrifying bacteria purchased to restore the activated sludge process after the loss of nitrification. Number 8. Field sampling labor, including repeated grab sampling at the Mid-Continent manhole over an extended period. Number 9. Shipping costs, including overnight shipment of analytical samples for laboratory testing. Number 10. Certified mailing costs associated with the enforcement actions and regulatory notices. Number 11. Publication costs associated with the notice of city's enforcement proceedings and additional enforcement costs, including those incurred by the city's environmental specialists, to be subsequently assessed. Number 101. These costs demonstrate the operational and environmental consequences associated with the discharge of pollutants into POTW. Number 102. The consequences of May 2025 discharge were not limited to the immediate expenses necessary to recover the plant. The violations of the Mid-Continent's permit also created enforcement and monitoring expenses. Part of regulating an industrial user when a permit violation occurs is to work with the user to assure the cause of the violations is incurred and to monitor the user to assure that future violations do not occur. In this case, this included ongoing laboratory testing and testing of possible alternative sources such as Tyson and Integris, as suggested by Mid-Continent. Number 103. City could not reasonably restore normal operations or ensure continued compliance with its OPDES and PDES permit without identifying the source of the inhibitory discharge, evaluating its compositions, determining whether additional discharge were occurred and implementing measures to prevent reoccurrence. Number 104. Mid-Continent timely appealed the notice of violation NOV 001 issued July 22nd, 2025. The administrative order issued November 21, 2025, and an amended administrative order issued March 16, 2026. Number 105. An evidentiary hearing before the board was held on June 22nd, 2026, and June 23rd, 2026, and June 29th, 2026. 106. The following exhibits offered by the city were admitted into evidence. Government Exhibit 1 through 25, 27 through 37, and 39 to 52. Mid-Continent objected to admission of Government Exhibit 17, 19, and 50. Its objections were overruled. Number 107. The following defendant exhibits offered by Mid-Continent were admitted into evidence. Defendant Exhibit 12, 15, 22, 40, 41, 43, and 47. The city did not object to admission of the Mid-Continent exhibit. Mid-Continent offered demonstrative Exhibit 3 and 4. The city objected to the demonstrative being admitted as exhibits. Mid-Continent withdrew the offer and demonstrate Exhibit 3. Demonstrative Exhibit 4 was admitted. Number 108. The board has not relied upon any single piece of evidence in reaching its decision. Instead, the board has weighed all of the direct and circumstantial evidence presented, including the physical evidence, sampling data, biological evidence, operational data, expert testimony, documentary evidence, and witness credibility. When viewed collectively rather than in isolation, the evidence continuously demonstrate that Mid-Continent discharge of quacks containing wastewater caused the materially contributed to May 2025 upset, resulting interference with the POTW and the violations found herein. Number 109. Mid-Continent is the only SIU in Enid that uses quacks containing compounds to manufacture products. Its usage of quacks is significantly larger than other facilities that use quacks for only cleaning and disinfecting purposes. It is undisputable that MH1P020 accepts the discharge of only effluent coming from Mid-Continent. The POTW upset was accompanied by significant foaming and cleaner-like smells. The 54th Street lift station, which directs effluent to the POTW, at the same time was experiencing significant foaming and cleaner-like smells. MH1P020, which is directly north of the 54th Street lift station, was at the same time experiencing significant foaming and cleaner-like smell. All these conditions were abnormal. It defines common sense to deny a connection between these three observations and the sole manufacturer of cleaning products that discharge into the Enid wastewater system and in effect discharges directly into one of the sites, MH1P020. Number 110. The testing of the May 20 grab sample along with subsequent samples in June, July, and August 2025 indicates the presence of quacks in MH1P020 in quantities that are not explainable by ordinary cleaning activities that one might see in any other significant business or industry. That is, it is apparent that the readings were the results of quacks being discharged in a greater quantity, not simply from wiping down counters or cleaning floors, not covered with coax waste. Number 111. Mid-Continent called no witness to dispute the evidence presented by the city with respect to the coax feedstock and material stored in the large quantities within its facility, nor the city's evidence with respect to the conditions of the facility and the significant risk of the escape of coax-laden substances. That unrebutted evidence demonstrate the significant risk to the wastewater system from accidental or intentional discharges of the coax effluent. Number 112. The presence of coax in MH1P020 demonstrates violations of the Mid-Continent permit. In addition to prohibiting actual interference with the POTW and pass-through, the permit prohibits discharge of substances that may interfere, either alone or in conjunction with other discharges. Number 113. The city investigated other potential sources rather than assuming Mid-Continent was responsible. Its investigation included field observation, wastewater pathway analysis, sampling from multiple locations, review of plant operational data, SDS review, documents review, meetings with Mid-Continent, and evaluations of other industrial users. The investigation was interactive and data-driven. As additional observations, sampling results, plant data, operator reports, and facility information became available. City personnel adjusted the investigation and coordinated additional sampling, review, and source evaluation. Number 114. The board finds that the city reasonably relied on multiple lines of evidence rather than a single data point, including foam and odor observations, analytical testing, plant performance data, bacterial testing, facility information, sewer configuration evidence, and source pathway knowledge. Number 115. The absence of an eyewitness to the specific cleaning or discharging event does not defect source attributions. The city's source determination is supported by circumstantial evidence, including Mid-Continent's operations, discharge pathways, timing, physical observations, sampling results, biological evidence, and evaluation of alternative sources. Number 116. The record supports a finding that the abnormal discharge indicators, WRF upset indicators, and downstream environmental consequences occurred within a closely connected time frame, and that the city reasonably expected its investigation after a report of a fish kill because the issue implicated downstream environmental impacts as well as plant operations. Number 117. The board does not find the absence of dimethyl ammonium chloride from certain influent reports sufficient to outweigh the remaining evidence. The numerous other coax compounds associated with Mid-Continent were identified in both Mid-Continent's wastewater and the plant influent. The board concludes that the absence of a single analytical analyte does not negate the city's source attribution analysis. Number 118. The board does not find that any other SIU possess the same combination of coax, handling operations, wastewater pathway, physical observation, sampling results, and temporal relationship to the May 2025 upset as a Mid-Continent. The city's investigation reasonably eliminated other significant industrial users as the likely source of the discharge. Number 119. The board does not find persuasive EDA's opinion that inhibition could not occur below approximately 50 milligrams per liter, such that Mid-Continent is not reasonable for WRF upset. Number 120. The decision to issue the notice of violation, administrative order, permit modification, cease and desist order, emergency suspension, and permit denial were based upon information developed during the city's investigation and recommendation of the city staff responsible for administration of the pretreatment program. Number 121. The board finds that neither the sewer use ordinance nor accepted wastewater engineering principle require the city to establish an exact chemical fingerprint, identifying every individual quack species at every sampling location, or prove a single universal inhibitory concentration before concluding that a prohibited discharge occurred. Thus, source attribution and interference are established by the totality of the evidence. Number 122. The board finds that quacks are antimicrobial compounds intended to kill or inhibit microorganisms. Because the Enid's WRF depends on living microorganisms to perform biological treatment, including nitrification, quacks containing wastewater is capable of creating toxic effects within the POTW when discharged into sufficient quantity. Number 123. The board finds that mid-continent discharge wastewater containing quacks and cationic surfactants to the city's sanitary sewer system. Those compounds included benzoylocomium family compounds, DDAC family compounds, ODD-MAC, DOMAC, and related quaternary ammonium compounds detected in samples collected from mid-continent's representative discharge location. Number 124. The board finds that the quack concentrations identified during the May 2025 event were not background municipal levels, ordinary household use, or trace contamination. The concentrations detected at mid-continent's discharge point and the mass of quacks entering the WRF were consistent with a significant industrial discharge. Number 125. The board finds that the mere existence of quacks from residential, commercial, or industrial sources does not preclude a finding that mid-continent contributed to the May 2025 upset. The evidence established that mid-continent's operations, the concentrations, and the mass of quacks discharged, the timing of the event, the physical observations, the sewer configurations, and the biological effects distinguished mid-continent's discharge from ordinary background sources. Number 126. The board finds that the quack containing wastewater caused or contributed to toxic effects within the WRF biological treatment process, including inhibition or loss of nitrifying bacteria, loss of ammonia level removal, disruption of biomass, and impaired treatment performance. Number 127. The board finds that mid-continent's discharge caused the contributions to interference with the operations and performance of the POTW. Before the May 2025 event, the WRF was achieving complete or near complete nitrification. After the event, effluent ammonia increased sharply, nitrification failed, suspended solids increased, phosphorus removal was impaired, and biological treatment performance deteriorated. Number 128. The board finds that the interference was not limited to a laboratory result. It was reflected in plant operations, foam and odor observations, loss of nitrifying bacteria, elevated ammonia, impaired phosphorus removal, operational response measures, and the need for recovery efforts. Number 129. The board finds that the discharge interfered with the city's ability to operate the WRF in the ordinary course and required extraordinary operational measures, including additional testing, cationic surfactants monitoring, NutraQuad, biological reseeding, pumping equipment, response planning, and diversion protocols. Number 130. The board finds that mid-continent's discharge caused or contributed to conditions that impaired the city's ability to comply with its OPDES, NPDES obligations. The city's permit required compliance with ammonia limits and protection of the receiving stream. Yet, the May 2025 upset caused elevated effluent ammonia and downstream environmental consequences. Number 131. The board finds that the city, as the OPDES, NPDES permit holder, was exposed to regulatory consequences because of the upset, including ODEQ enforcement and wildlife-related assessment arising from downstream impacts. Number 132. The board finds that the discharge created conditions that impaired the city's ability to prevent pass-through because pollutants entered the POTW in quantities and under circumstances that impaired the treatment plant under the treatment and affected the city's ability to protect Skeleton Creek. Number 133. The board finds that the May 2025 event was acute and not a gradual decline in the plant performance. The WRF was operating with effective ammonia removal before the event, followed by a sudden ammonia spike, foam odor, and biological treatment failure. Number 134. The board finds that the timing of Mid-Continent's May 19th cleaning audit activities returned to full production, foam and cleaner odor at the Mid-Continent manhole, and the immediate downstream observations support a finding that the discharge was episodic or slug-like in nature. 135. The board finds that the discharge was of a nature, volume, or concentration sufficient to disrupt the POTW and requires immediate operational response. Number 136. The board finds that Mid-Continent failed to adequately prevent quack-containing wastewater, wash water spills, tank rinsates, or related chemical residues from entering the sanitary sewer system. Number 137. The board finds that Mid-Continent did not demonstrate adequate pre-treatment, segregation, contaminant monitoring, or off-site disposal controls sufficient to protect the POTW from quacks containing wastewater. Number 138. The board finds that Mid-Continent did not timely or completely provide the information necessary for the city to evaluate its discharge practices, quack-containing waste streams, SDS, chemical inventories, pre-treatment practices, containerization, off-site disposal, and corrective measures. Number 139. The board finds that the city could not reliably protect the POTW without complete information regarding Mid-Continent's quack-containing products, waste pathways, treatment practices, and discharge controls. Number 140. The board finds that the administrative order was necessary because the NOV alone did not resolve the compliance concerns. Continued quack detections, unresolved wastewater pathways, incomplete information, and inadequate demonstrated pre-treatment justifies the corrective measures, continued monitoring, and enforceable compliance obligations. Number 141. The board finds that the city's requested costs were reasonably and necessarily to incur to investigate the discharge, identify its source, restore biological treatment, respond to ODEQ and wildlife-related consequences, protect the POTW, and prevent recurrence. Number 142. The board finds that the requested penalties and cost recovery are reasonable in light of nature of the violations, the harm to the POTW, the downstream environmental impacts, the city's regulatory exposure, Mid-Continent's incomplete information, and the resources required to investigate, respond to, and prevent reoccurrence. Number 143. Having considered Mid-Continent's defenses together with all of the evidence presented, the board concludes that those defenses do not overcome the greater weight of the evidence establishing that the Mid-Continent discharged quack-containing wastewater that caused or materially contributed to the May 2025 WRF upset and the resulting violations of the sewer use ordinance and permit number 021. Number 144. The board finds that the NOV and administrative orders were issued not merely to impose penalties, but to identify and eliminate the cause of May 2025 upset, obtaining information necessary for the cities to evaluate Mid-Continent's wastewater practices, require corrective measures to protect POTW, ensuring future compliance with permit number 021 and the sewer use ordinance, and reduce the likelihood of similar interference with the city's biological treatment process. The administrative order was reasonable, exercised the city's pre-treatment authority following completion of its investigation. Number 145. Accordingly, the board finds that the city's proved the factual basis for the NOV and administrative order by greater weight of its evidence, of the evidence.
Do you want me to?
Yeah.
Is that okay if I take over? Conclusion of laws. Jurisdiction and standard of review. The Environmental Enforcement Board has jurisdiction over this appeal pursuant to the Enid Sewer Use Ordinance. The board conducted a de novo evidentiary hearing and serves as a finder of the fact, including determining witness credibility, weighing conflicting evidence, and applying the applicable provisions of the Sewer Use Ordinance, permit number 021, and governing state and a federal pretreatment law. Federal regulatory authority. The MPDES program begins with a federal regulation. 40 CFR Part 403 covers pre-treatment regulations for existing and new sources of pollution. It establishes responsibility of federal, state, and local government, industry, and public to implement national pre-treatment standards to control pollutants which pass through or interfere with treatment processes in publicly owned treatment works, POTWs, or which may contaminate sewage sludge. 40 CFR 403.1A. At 403.5, it establishes national pretreatment standards and defines prohibitive discharges, general prohibitions. A user may not introduce into a POTW any pollutants which cause pass-through or interference. These general prohibitions and the specific prohibitions in paragraph B of this section apply to each user introducing pollutants into a POTW, whether or not the user is subject to the national pretreatment standards or any national, state, or local pretreatment requirements. 40 CFR 403.5A-1. Specific prohibitions, including any pollutant released at a rate or concentration that will cause interference with the POTW. 40 CFR 403.5B4. Two standards are used to regulate discharges: the categorical standard and the prohibitive discharges standard. Petronas versus Marshall Durbin Food Corp. 205 WAWL 8158435 at *11 ND LAL March 17th of 2005. While some categorical standards are set, not all pollutants are subject to a categorical standard. Instead, prohibited discharges are determined by toxic effect and potential. Weyerhaeuser NRCO versus Washington State Department of Ecological and Pollution Control Hearings Board, 33 Washington App 2D 1040 2024 AM Pepper Industry, Inc. versus US EPA 996 F 2D 346349 DC, circulate 1993. The Clean Water Act and its regulations recognize neither a good faith nor a de minimis defense. Intent and good faith are irrelevant in actions involving strict liability for contaminated MPDES permit violations. Petronas versus Marshall, Durbin Food Corp. I assume all the rest of this needs to be in the record. Is that accurate?
It's a reference to the case citation. You've
Correct.
already referenced that case citation.
Thank you.
Just go ahead and say id.
ID?
Id.
Okay. State Regulatory Authority, the Oklahoma Department of Environmental Quality issues permits for municipal wastewater plants and requires municipalities to regulate industrial users, among other prohibitions on discharges. Oklahoma regulations prevent the discharge of 7 wastewater causing alone or in conjunction with other sources. The treatment plant's effluents who fail a toxicity test. For purpose of this paragraph, toxicity means that the endpoint of the acute biomonitoring test requirement as specified in the CCTS NPDES permit. Oklahoma Admin Code 252-623-3-1. Oklahoma regulations also expressly prohibited 8 detergent, surface agent, active agents, or other substances which may cause excessive foaming in the POTW. Oklahoma Admin Code 252-623-3-1. Further, ODEQ defines that interference includes a discharge with, alone, or with other discharges, inhibits or disrupts the POTW treatment process or operations, and contributes to a violation of requirements of the POTW NPDES permit. Oklahoma Admin Code 25623-1-4. Pass-through includes a discharge that exits the POTW into waters of the United States in quantities or concentrations that cause a violation of the POTW's NPDES permit. Oklahoma Admin Code 25623-1-4. Pretreatment includes reduction, elimination, or alteration of pollutants before discharge to a POTW, including controls to protect against surges or slug loads that might interfere with or be incompatible with the POTW. Oklahoma Admin Code 25623-1-4, 27A 2-6-2025. Slug includes any non-routine episodic discharge, including an accidental spill or non-customary batch discharge. Oklahoma Admin Code 25623-1-4. City Regulatory Authority. The Enid Code of Ordinances contains several provisions prohibiting discharges in violation of an SIU's permit. 8-3F-3 requires a permit stating, A, permit required. It shall be unlawful for any significant industrial user to discharge any wastewater into any natural outlet within the city and or to the POTW without a wastewater discharge permit, except as also authorized by the environmental compliance specialist in accordance with the provisions of this article. 8-3F-4 allows for conditions and ordinance compliance stating, C, permit conditions. Wastewater discharge permits shall be expressly subject to all provisions of this article and all other applicable ordinances. Other charges and fees established by the city. Specific prohibitions are also contained in the Code of Ordinances. 8-3A-8A, discharge of certain waters or waste to sanitary sewer. A, general prohibitions. No user shall contribute or cause to be contributed directly or indirectly into a POTW any pollutant or wastewater which will interfere with the operation or performance of or pass through the POTW. Furthermore, Furthermore, no user may contribute the following substance to the POTW. 8-3A-8A1, any liquids, solids, or gases which by reason of their nature or quantity are or may be sufficient either alone or in interaction with other substances to be injurious in any way to the POTW or to the operation of the POTW. 8-3A-8A4, any wastewater containing toxic pollutants in the sufficient quantity, either singly or by interaction with other pollutants to injure or interfere with any wastewater treatment process, constitutes a hazard to humans or animals, create a toxic effect in the receiving waters of the POTW, or to exceed the limitations set forth in a categorical pretreatment standard. A toxic pollutant shall include, but not be limited to, any pollutant identified pursuant to 307A of the Act, C 33 USC 1317A. 8-3A-8A7, any substance which will cause the POTW to violate its NPDES permit or the state water quality standards. 8-3A-8A10, any pollutants, excluding oxygen-demanding pollutants, BOD5, and the like, release in a discharge rate and or pollutant concentrate which will cause interference to the POTW. 8-3A-8A12, any wastewater which causes a hazard to human life or creates a public nuisance. 8-3A-2 contains definitions of relevant terms. Interference, a discharge which alone or in conjunction with a discharge or discharges from other sources. 1. Inhibits or disrupts the POTW treatment processes or operations in its sludge process, use or disposal. And 2. Therefore contributes to a violation of any requirement of the city's NPDES permit, including an increase in the magnitude or duration of a violation, or of the prevention of sewer sludge use or disposal by the POTW in accordance with any of the following statutory, regulatory provisions or permits issued thereunder, or more stringent state or local regulations. 405 of the Clean Water Act, 33 USC 1345, or any criteria, guidelines, or regulations developed pursuant to the Solid Waste Disposal Act, SWDA, including Title II, commonly referred to as the Resource Conservation and Recovery Act, RCRA, C42 USC 6901,
Sequel.
Et sec. It means
Et sec.
the section, that entire, it's a reference to the entire section.
Gotcha. Or more stringent state criteria contained in any sludge management plan prepared pursuant to Subtitle D of the SWDA, C42 USC 6941 exec, the Clean Air Act, C42 USC 7401 exec, the Toxic Substance Control Act, C15 USC 2601 exec, and the Marine Protection Research and Sanctuaries Act, C14 USC 1431 exec, and 33 USC 1401 exec. Pass-through, a discharge which exits the POTW into the waters of the U.S. in quantities or concentrations which alone or in conjunction with a discharge or discharges from other sources. It is a cause of a violation of any requirement of the POTW's NPDES permit, including an increase in the magnitude or duration of the violation. Slug, any discharge or non-routine episodic nature, including but not limited to an accidental spill or a non-customary batch discharge. Toxic pollutant, any pollutant or combination of pollutants listed as a toxic in regulation promulgated by the administrator of the Environmental Protection Agency under the provisions of CWA 307A, C 33 USC 1317A, or other acts. Upset, An exceptional incident in which there is an unintentional and temporary noncompliance with categorical pretreatment standards because of factors beyond the reasonable control of the industrial user. An EPSA does not include noncompliance to the extent caused by operational error, improperly designed treatment facilities, inadequate treatment facilities, lack of preventative maintenance, or careless or improper operations. Evidentiary standards. The city bears the burden of proof to establish which alleged violation by the preponderance of the evidence. Under Oklahoma law, this is also called the greater weight of the evidence, meaning that the burden is to show something is more probably true than not. See Badillo versus Mid-Century Insurance Company, 2005, Oklahoma 48, 121, P.3D, 1080-1096, as corrected, June 22nd, 2005. Insured was required to prove the essential elements of his claim for breach of the duty of the good faith and fair dealing by a greater weight of evidence standard, i.e., by a preponderance of the evidence, as the well-known axiom states. The preponderance of evidence does not mean the greater number of witnesses testifying to the fact, but that which to the mind of the trier of the fact or the seeker of the truth seems most conveniencing and more probably true. The board may consider both direct and circumstantial evidence, CEG, OUJI 3.25. The law makes no distinction between the weight to be given to either direct or circumstantial evidence. You should consider circumstantial evidence together with all the other evidence in the case in arriving at your verdict. Mid-Continent argues that the issue is all about science and that is necessarily for scientific evidence, and the scientists to provide answers to whether it was responsible for the plant upset or violated its permit. The issue before the board is not whether the causation can be demonstrated with scientific certainty. Scientific certainty seeks to eliminate doubt. A preponderance of the evidence simply asks which explanation is more probable one. Courts have long rejected scientific certainty as a standard in environmental matters. See Ethel Corp. Versus Environmental Protection Agency 541F.2D 128N.58 DC Circuit 1976. Petitioners demand sole resilience on scientific facts, on evidence that reputable scientific techniques certify as certain. Typically, a scientist will not so certify evidence unless the probability of error by standard statistical measurement is less than 5%. That is, scientific fact is at least 95% certain. Also see Friends of the Earth, Inc. versus Gaston Cooper Recycling Corp. 204 F.3D 149163, 4th Circuit 2000. Litigants routinely rely on circumstantial evidence to prove any number of contested issues, and if a prosecutor may rely wholly on circumstantial evidence to prove that a criminal defendant is guilty beyond a reasonable doubt, there is no apparent reason, and certainly not a reason apparent from the Constitution, the federal rules, or the Clean Water Act itself. To regard this type of proof as per se deficient for establishing standing in a Clean Water Act case. Environmental enforcement statutes do not require scientific certainty before regulatory action may be taken. Courts have consistently recognized that environmental decision-making necessarily involves evaluation of incomplete, conflicting, and circumstantial evidence, and that the applicable legal question is whether the evidence makes the asserted conclusion more probable than not whether every competing hypothesis has been scientifically eliminated. Ethel Corp. Versus EPA 541 F.2D 128 DC Circuit 1976. The administrator may apply his expertise to draw conclusions from suspected, but do not completely sustained relationships between facts, from trends among facts, from theoretical projections, from imperfect data, from prohibitive preliminary data, do not certifiably as fact, and the like. Lead industries Association, EPA 467 F.2D 1130 1148.-49 DC Circuit 1980 Sierra Club versus US EPA 774 F.3D 383 395-96 7th Circuit 2014. Mid-Continent further argues that the city was required to scientifically fingerprint its wastewater by proving that every individual QAC species identified at Mid-Continent's representative sampling location was likewise identified at the WRF influent before source attribution can be established. The board rejects that argument. Courts addressing environmental contamination have repeatedly recognized that pollutants are diluted, mixed, transported, absorbed, degraded, and otherwise altered during migration through environmental systems, making exact chemical fingerprinting difficult or impossible. Accordingly, courts have held that environmental liability may be established through the total of the evidence, including similar contaminants, migration pathways, operational evidence, expert testimony, and circumstantial evidence, and does not require proof that every contaminant may be chemically traced to a specific source. See Arsco LLC versus CEMEX Inc. 21F.Sup 3D 784 803-04 WD Tex 2014, holding that imposing a fingerprinting requirement might permit the owners and operators of facilities to avoid financial responsibility, and that a plaintiff need not fingerprint contamination to establish liability. United States versus Fairchild Industries, Inc., 766F.Sup 405-413 DMD 1991, holding that the government need not trace each defendant's hazardous waste to a specific release, but need only prove that the hazardous substance, like those contained in the defendant's waste, were present at the site. New York versus Adaminsky, 16 F.Sup 3D 123 148-49 EDNY 2014, holding that a CERCLA plaintiff is not required to fingerprint downgradient contamination, and that environmental causation need not be established with scientific certainty. Citations omitted. The board further concludes that neither the procedural order, the sewer use ordinance, Oklahoma pretreatment law, nor accepted principles of the administrative law require the city to eliminate every possible alternative source of QACs or disprove every competing hypothesis before enforcement could occur. The board is not charged with resolving every scientific disagreement or identifying the precise molecular fate of every QAC compound after discharge into the collection system. Rather, the board must determine whether the greater weight of the evidence establishes that Mid-Continent caused or contributed to the alleged violations. The board therefore evaluates the evidence under the preponderance of the evidence standard required by the procedural order rather than the heightened standard of scientific certainty advocated by Mid-Continent. For the reasons set forth in the findings of the fact and infra, the board concludes that the city satisfies its burden. Interpretation of law, of governing law. The ordinance creates effect-based prohibitions. The city operates its POTW pursuant to any LPDES, NPDES permit and remains responsible for complying with that permit effluent limitations, monitoring requirements, reporting obligations, and other regulatory requirements. The Clean Water Act, Oklahoma Environment Environmental Quality Code, Oklahoma Pretreatment Regulations, Enid Sewer Use Ordinance, and Permit Number 021 operate together to prevent industrial users from introducing pollutants that interfere with treatment, pass through inadequately treated, damaged sludge or residuals, creating nuisance or safety conditions, or impair the city's OPDES, NPDES compliance. Because the city is the OPDES, NPDES permit holder, ODEQ looks to the city for permit compliance even when the pollutant causing or contributing to noncompliance originates from an industrial user. The sewer use ordinance must therefore be interpreted as a protective and preventative pre-treatment ordinance. Its prohibitions apply when a discharge causes or contributes to prohibited effects on the POTW, receiving water, sludge, residuals, public safety, or the city's permit compliance. QACs need not be expressly listed. The board concludes that the absence of numerical local limit or specific reference to QACs in permit number 021 or the sewer use ordinance does not authorize discharge of QACs containing wastewater where the discharge causes or contributes or may cause to or contribute to interfere, toxic effects, pass through, nuisance conditions, sludge impacts, or impairment of the city's OPDES, NPDES obligations. Enid Code 8-3A-8A4 is not limited to pollutants identified under Clean Water Act 307A. The ordinance provides that toxic pollutants include, but are not limited to, those federally identified pollutants. Accordingly, QAC containing wastewater may constitute a prohibited discharge if it is present in a sufficient quantity, either singly or by interaction with other pollutants, to injure or interfere with wastewater treatment, create toxic effects, or otherwise cause one of the prohibited effects identified in the ordinance. Proof of causation, interference, or source attribution. The law does not require the city to prove each individual analytical result in isolation. Rather, the board must determine whether the cumulative force of the evidence makes Mid-Continent's responsibility more probable true than not. Source attribution, interference, toxic effects, and pass-through may be established by the total of the evidence, including operational data, sampling results, biological testing, field observation, sewer configuration, timing, expert testimony, and other direct or circumstantial evidence. Circumstantial environmental proof consists of multiple converging facts that individually may not establish causation, but collectively do. Here are those facts. The city's dye test confirming that manhole 1P020 represented Mid-Continent's discharge before commingling. The location of the sewer system and elimination of other significant industrial sources upstream of the sampling point. The sudden appearance of excessive foam and cleaner-like odor at Mid-Continent's manhole, the 54th Street lift station, and the WRF headworks. Repeated and analytical detection of numerous QAC compounds in Mid-Continent's discharge over multiple sampling events. Contemporaneous detection of QACs entering the WRF effluent, bacterial speciation, plant operational data, and ammonia trends demonstrating a sudden loss of nitrification. QAC mass load calculations showing quantities inconsistent with an ordinary residential or commercial sources. SDS's product information and chemical inventories identify the same families of QAC used in Mid-Continent's manufacturing operations and warning against discharge to sanitary sewers or aquatic environments. Mid-Continent's emissions regarding cleaning activities immediately preceding the upset and its subsequential decision to containerize QACs containing wastewater after May 22, 2005. 2025. The city's physical investigation, including inspection of manholes, wastewater, pathways, production areas, floor drains, contamination areas, hoses, and discharge routes. Mid-Continent's incomplete, involving, and sometimes inconsistent explanations regarding its wastewater handling, chemical usage, and pretreatment practices. The elimination or evaluation of other potential industrial sources, and the testimony of city witnesses explaining why the observed operational, biological, and analytical evidence was consistent with a significant QAC discharge from Mid-Continent. The board evaluates these facts collectively rather than requiring any single piece of evidence to independently prove every element. Conclusions. Interference. Enid Code 8-3A-8A prohibits any discharge that will interfere with the operation or performance of the POTW. Based upon the finding of facts, the board concludes that the Mid-Continent's discharge of QACs containing wastewater inhibited and disrupted the city's activated sludge treatment process, caused the loss of nitrification, impaired ammonia removal, disrupted biomass and treatment performance, and therefore constituted interference within the meaning of Enid Code 8-3A-8A and Oklahoma pretreatment regulations. Toxic pollutants. Enid Code 8-3A-8A4 prohibits wastewater containing toxic pollutants in sufficient quantity to interfere or injure or interfere with wastewater treatment processes or create toxic effect within the POTW or receiving waters. Based upon findings of fact, the board concludes that Mid-Continent discharged QAC containing wastewater in the sufficient quantity to create toxic effects within the city's biological treatment process, including inhibition and destruction of nitrifying bacteria necessary for wastewater treatment, sludge, and biological treatment. Enid Code 8-3A-8A6 prohibits substances that render sludge or other POTW residuals unsuitable or otherwise impair treatment. Based on findings of fact, the board concludes that Mid-Continent's discharge disrupted biomass, floc formation, solid settling, sludge quality, and related biological treatment functions, thereby violating 8-3A-8A6. NPDES and water quality. Enid Code 8-3A-8A7 prohibits discharges that will cause the POTW to violate its NPDES permit or state water quality standards. Based upon the findings of fact, the board concludes that Mid-Continent's discharge impaired the city's ability to comply with its OPDES permit, caused elevated effluent ammonium, contributed to downstream environmental impacts, resulted in ODEQ enforcement, and therefore violated 8-3A-8A7. Pollutant loading. Enid Code 8-3A-8A10 prohibits pollutant concentrates or discharge rates that cause interference. Based upon finding of fact, the board concludes that the nature, concentration, and mass loading of QAC containing wastewater discharged by Mid-Continent constituted a prohibited pollutant loading under 8-3A-8A10. Public nuisance. Enid Code 8-3A-8A12 prohibits wastewater that creates a public nuisance. Based upon the finding of fact, the board concludes that Mid-Continent's discharge producing excessive foaming, strong cleaner-like odors within the collection system of the POTW, disruption of the wastewater treatment operations, downstream environmental impacts, and regulatory enforcement, all of which constituted nuisance conditions within the meaning of the ordinance. Permit violation. Permit number 021 required Mid-Continent to comply with the sewer use ordinance, maintain adequate pretreatment, prevent prohibited discharges, report operational changes, and provide information necessary for the city to evaluate compliance. The board finds that Mid-Continent violated permit number 021 by discharging QAC-laden effluent into the public wastewater system. QAC containing effluent is or may be toxic to its and is prohibited from individual discharge in quantities that cause foaming, interferes by itself or in combination with other effluent to interfere with the POTW or pass through the POTW. The Mid-Continent discharge violated each of the above cited provisions and its permit and caused the city to violate its permit issued by the DODEQ for operation of the wastewater facility. These failures constituted violation of permit number 021 and independently justified enforcement under the sewer use ordinance. City investigation and enforcement. Based upon finding of fact, the board concludes that the city acted reasonably in investigating the May 2025 treatment upset through field observation, repeated sampling, biological testing, document request, facility inspections, engineering evaluation, expert consultation, and continued communications with Mid-Continent. The city was not required to establish liability through direct observation of a discharge or through an exact chemical fingerprint before taking enforcement action. The evidence available to the city provided a reasonable factual basis to conclude that Mid-Continent caused or contributed to the WRF upset. The notice of violation was authorized by the sewer use ordinance and supported by the evidence available to the city at the time of its issuance. The administrative order likewise constituted a reasonable and authorized enforcement measure. Based upon the findings of fact, the board concludes that the continued QAC detections, unresolved wastewater pathways, incomplete information, and inadequate demonstrated pretreatment justified the corrective measures imposed therein. Mid-Continent did not establish any affirmative defense recognized under Oklahoma pretreatment regulations. The evidence demonstrates that Mid-Continent knew or reasonably should have known that its handling and discharge of the QAC containing wastewater could interfere with a biological wastewater treatment facility. Cost recovery and penalties. The sewer use ordinance authorizes recovery of costs reasonably incurred to investigate prohibited discharges, protect the POTW, restore treatment operations, and enforce the city's pretreatment program. Based upon the finding of facts, the board concludes that the city's requested costs, including sampling, laboratory analysis, wet testing, cationic surfactant testing, biological reseeding, NutriQuat, and related treatment measures, engineering consultation, regulatory response, ODEQ compliance efforts, wildlife-related costs, employee time, and associated enforcement expenses were reasonably and necessarily incurred as a result of Mid-Continent's violations. The penalties and cost recovery sought by the city are authorized by the sewer use ordinance and are reasonable in light of nature of the violation. The operational disruption to the POTW, the city's regulatory exposure, the downstream environmental consequences, and the resources required to investigate, remediate, and prevent reoccurrence. Mid-Continent's violation of permit number 021 cause response cost incurred by the city in the amount of $104,799.46. The amounts are assessed to Mid-Continent, which is ordered to pay the amounts within 10 days of the date of this final order. Response costs include enforcement costs are ongoing. The city may subsequently assess its enforcement costs against Mid-Continent. Mid-Continent is entitled to appear any subsequent assessment under the terms of the Enid Code of Ordinances. Order. It is therefore ordered and adjudged that 1. Mid-Continent violated the general prohibited discharge provisions of Enid Code 8-3A-8 the requirements of the industrial user permit number 021, and the city's pretreatment program by discharging QAC containing wastewater that caused or contributed to interference with the POTW, toxic effects within the biological treatment process, impairment of the city's OPDES, NPDES, compliance obligations, and other prohibited conditions identified in the sewer use ordinance. 2, notice of violations number 001 is affirmed. 3, administrative order and amended administrative order number NOV 001 are affirmed. 4, Mid-Continent shall comply with the corrective measures set forth in administrative order and administrative orders numbers NOV 001. 5, Mid-Continent shall comply with all corrective measures imposed herein. 6, the city is awarded recoverable costs in the amount of $104,799.46. This is the amount shall be paid to the city within 30 days of the appealing party's receipt of the judgment of the board. The city's environmental compliance officer may proceed with any additional enforcement costs she finds necessary under the city's code. This decision is final unless appealed pursuant to 12 Oklahoma State 951 to the Garfield County District Court within 30 days of the appealing party's receipt of the judgment of the board. Wherefore, these findings of fact and conclusions of law are issued as the final judgment of the Environmental Enforcement Board as reflected by a vote held in public session on August 11th, 2026.
Do I have a motion to?
There needs to be one correction if you'll scroll back up to. Scroll back up.
Are you talking about on?
Scroll up just a little further. The amounts, it should be 30 days of the date of the final
Okay.
order there. So your motion will need to include that amendment to the order.
Okay, so 30 days. So do I have a motion to amend that?
Do we do that all
It would
as
just be
one?
a motion to amend
I will make a
or
motion
approve
to
the
approve
order as amended.
with the amendment of 30 days.
Yep.
Second.
Okay, cast your ballot. It's not working.
The amendment was on the time to pay the
Yeah, it said 10 days one place. It should have read 30 days.
30 days. Thank you.
Just vote by show of hands.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
Sure.
It might be working.
Okay, cast your ballots. Passes 4-0. Number 5, public comment.
Is there anyone saying?
None? I don't think anyone signed up. Okay. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
I will make a motion to adjourn.
I second it.
All right, cast your ballot. Passes 4-0. Motion adjourned.
Okay, so you got-